choose from. I don't have meetings, and I'm my own boss.
I had a dashboard full of code. Basically tells me we're not going to sign your support letter. We're actually going to lay you off. Here is your severance. Here is all the details. Can you sign here? Now, during that period of time, damn, that was unexpected, right? And I wasn't thinking of how can I survive? What's my next job? I was thinking my visa expires in 9 days, and I don't know what I'm going to do about that. Do I have to uproot my life? Do I have to move ASAP? How am I going to deal with all the possessions that I have here? Because I have monitors, I have little guitars and stuff like that, my car, all those different type of toys that I bought over a session. Do I have to sell it all in 9 days and go back up to Canada, right? That was one of the questions I had. Because I was very financially responsible, I wasn't that concerned about the money necessarily. So there was a good bit, right? But overall, basically, we walked out of the office. I had the paperwork with me.
Mm-hmm.
She told me, get all your stuff, put it in a box, and get out, basically. So I did that. I didn't put any consideration to it. I'll be fine. This is the process. This is what I had to do. I went home, and actually the first thing I did was I reached out to my family, let them know that I was laid off. And then the next step I did was I reached out to
Hey
all
guys.
my network to get my next job. Right? So
I'm homeless yet again.
Hey, I got laid off. Can anybody refer me a job, right? So a lot of people have compassion for that. So we'll see where it goes from
Well,
there.
what are you, lazy? You need to go work for a trash can company. You entitled, spoiled brat.
So let's go through this in detail. So firstly, it's important to trust your instincts, right? So normally there is a vibe shift that you can pick up on. Less work.
Normally there is a vibe shift. Okay.
That will give you signs of a layoff is coming up, or just a general negative vibe being around.
Don't get comfortable.
And one thing I'd advise you all to do is to prepare.
We're about to kick you out.
I know many of us are living with it, dealing with it, whether it's with layoffs, being forced into self-employment, or being considered someone who might need to move abroad to find a good paying job opportunity. Maybe leaving your home country for somewhere where there is less tax. So these are all the type of situations that people are kind of pushed into. That's why something I recommend in my videos is that you avoid miserable marriages, you avoid a lot of massive mortgages. Lots of people are trying to live the trad life, the traditional life, which would be a stable 9 to 5, having a big family, having lots of kids, having a massive house in the suburbs. I'm not saying those things are necessarily bad things, but this is
don't expect to have a real life.
Right? You might be thinking, oh, I've got my stable corporate 6-figure job now, I'll be fine forever. And it's like, oh no, all of a sudden you've lost that job. How are you going to pay for your kids in private school? The wife might have instability in her career. You're going to have higher interest rates. You have to mitigate for how unstable things are. You're not living in the stable 1950s or even 1990s.
Yeah,
right?
What do you think? You're going to be okay?
Trying to live realistically in this society. You mentioned being frugal, not spending a lot of money. This is a reality. You've got to consider that. You could be relatively okay.
Wake up.
And the next, out of nowhere, you're caught blindsided by HR and a manager dragged into a room, right? The other thing I want to think carefully about is working abroad. Many people in London, for example,
take into consideration
Dubai has
there's no way out, and you're fucking screwed. So we want to really make sure we understand that.
You're going to Dubai, you're paying 0% or 5% income tax. So many people want to do that, but then if you go and work there, what is the visa situation if you lose your job? You have to leave the country within 5 days, within 90 days, whatever that would be. You can quickly find any job you can get, otherwise you'll be kicked out of the country. And then if you are, what about the rent you're paying for your apartment there? You're going to have to keep paying rent even if you get kicked out of the country. What is the situation there, right? So think about all these unexpected situations and be observant of the changes around you, not just team changes where you might sense.
It's important to me that someone's in my time zone because I want to communicate with them easily. At work, you can switch by time zone, but
things to really be aware of. And also, treat companies as disposable as they treat you. Because you mentioned how HR gave them all these instructions and told them just pack your stuff up in a box and get out of the building, right? In one way or another. And I've went through a layoff and things like that can happen. I'm sure many of you have. It's just like, it's the funny thing about a layoff is very final part of their fake nice veneer, the fake nice front they're putting on is being wiped away. So it's like they're losing the energy And I know
Now
you-
they just want you to leave.
Now I can finally see the true colours. We don't really pretend to make the effort to be fake nice with me. You just want me to get out of the building. So here's what it is. Now, one thing I say is that having real power comes from being a minimalist in many cases. We do live in a quite materialistic society. Everything's driven by money. How much money you have determines how much freedom you have, what freedom of speech you're allowed to have. Because if you get cancelled and need millions of dollars to make sure you can still make a living through your investments and things like that. So being a minimalist really does come down to having a lot more power, right? People might think, oh, if you're a minimalist, you're being cheap, you're a cheapskate, you're being a miser, you're not having fun. But you actually have more power being a minimalist because you're kind of opting out the game. You're kind of saying, well, I'll take the money I have and invest it. I'll take the money I have and just, however you choose to spend it, could be learning more skills, so you're less dependent on hiring people, let's just say, to do renovations in your home. It could be all type of ways that you can manage that, or being a minimalist and buying affordable property in developing countries, so you can go and live there in the future. The point is, don't go down the wide path you want to go down. Take the narrow path, which would be think about alternative solutions, which could be, say, being a minimalist. He has a lot of power and leverage now to make decisions about the next move in his career because he saved his money, right? If he didn't, he'd be panicking. He'd be like, take out some credit card loan to fund for my lifestyle. He didn't live beyond his means. He wasn't fooled by corporate mystique or stability, right? And minimalism gives you real power from corporations. Firstly, you're able to determine your self-worth or your social status based on what car you drive or what watch you have. But you have more power to be less dependent on the corporation for a job and less dependent on them to determine your self-worth, right? And there is a growing movement I see amongst many people, let's just say in America, with people who are living off-grid and buying their own properties and
Living in trash
growing their own
cans.
food, having their own solar panels to be completely independent of the grid. In the UK,
The grid, yeah,
right-wing
sure.
leaning, freedom, libertarian type of movements where people live in maybe more
You can
smaller
live in
towns
some
the
grass.
UK, more countrysides type of areas, and they are looking at
With
ways
the
of
farm
being more
animals
sustainable
in a
themselves,
barn.
some kind of climate change type of focus group. But because they hate the system, they realize the system hates them. So they're like, oh, cool, well, can I collect more rainwater? Can we have a small local business where we're supporting each other? I see that more and more. I actually saw online on another YouTube channel where some people have gone through a layoff and they've built a bit of a network between them that when they need certain services, whether it's a plumber, an electrician, a web developer, they look in that network to hire each other on a self-employed basis rather than going to a major corporation. And I think that's great, right? I think it's great for people to be supporting each other and building a community based on, I want to hire the local person rather than the mega corporation that's going to basically destroy the way people live their lives and their freedom. So that's worthwhile considering being a minimalist, focused on alternative solutions. Now, one thing I'd say, there's two different approaches you can have after a layoff. One is having a quick start and quickly getting into another job after a situation. The other is taking a moment to reflect after a layoff and thinking, do I need a mental break? Do I need to really think about my career? Like, one thing I'd say for him, and I'm not blaming him or anything, but is thinking about why didn't I pick up on the signs? Like, sometimes it could be coming out of nowhere, but normally there are a few signs, right? And then I think, am I right for this industry? Not in the sense of self-doubt or imposter syndrome, but think about, what is my real skill set? How do I really want to build my life and design my future, right? So those are all things worthwhile considering during your time out in the industry rather than quickly, I have to find the next job. And that's what he's taught himself with the minimalism and the saving is a little bit of freedom, right? Now, the other thing I'd say is be careful about what you tell your family, right? Obviously, he comes, I would assume, from an Asian background, speaking.
You're going to want to hide the fact that you're homeless from your family.
It depends on how your family would react. Some families, depending on the culture, they could be quite harsh and blame you for the layoff or you did something wrong. Well, other people didn't get a layoff, you got a layoff, so you must be someone who's not good at the job. So these are the type of things to consider when you share it with family members. I personally would recommend you don't tell family members or friends if you're dealing with a layoff unless you think they're going to be supportive. Sometimes they just layer on levels of layers of negativity. In certain cases, I'd recommend you just focus on finding alternative solutions for yourself, whether it's a job hunt, focus on self-employment. The harsh reality about this world is strangers on the internet are going to be more supportive than many times family and friend members, right? So family members and friends. So, for example,
With Gemini and Google Docs, you can get help brainstorming visual inspiration for your brain.
definitely reach out to your network to see if they have other jobs for you, make connections on LinkedIn, recruiters, do your own job search, and things like that. But many times, family and friends, they could be happy that you're not doing so well. You'd be surprised how many of them might be jealous of your success. And the other thing is, same thing when it comes to self-employment, being a freelancer, being a content creator, whatever that would be. You'd be surprised how many people would be unhappy for your success, right? Including your family and friends, because they see you in a little box. So when you're going through major life change and major setbacks, I think sometimes, in my opinion, it's best not to tell others. That won't be helpful. If I know
You're gonna want to hide the fact that you're totally fucked.
Channel, I'm not going to be mentioning it to them. If you're going to start a side business as an electrician, web developer, whatever that would be, if you're not going to be supportive, don't post it on your personal social media. You can have a separate account for that under another name if you want, or just your company name. If you're going to be freelancing, like I say, as a web developer online, you can maybe set up your profile on freelancing websites, and you don't have to put your full name, so people search your name online, they might not find you directly. There's all sorts of
Oh, there it
ways
goes.
around
Okay,
it.
good.
So it's just worthwhile bearing in mind who's actually going to be supportive of you, and many times it's not necessarily family. So this guy got laid off from his engineering job roughly around November 2024. And then in January, so a few months after that, he posted this additional video giving a bit of an update on what's going on in his life. So let's listen to the most recent status on him.
Plans for the future. So what happened after the layoff? The layoff obviously was quite emotional. So I took some time to decompress. And after I did that, immediate thing on the horizon was Italy. What do I do to stay compliant with immigration standards in the U.S.? So what I did was I scheduled some time with a lawyer, asked the questions, which I'll share here. And I'll also
Then I went
share
out and hired a fucking lawyer.
So for context, I had 9 days to go on my TN visa before it expired, right? So time wasn't on my side. I had a lot of questions, including, do I have to move back to Canada within 9 days? Do I have that 60-day grace period? So what the lawyer told me is, no, you do not have your 60-day grace period, but
Get
you
the
have
fuck
to
out.
leave within 9 days. You can come back on a tourist visa in order to clean up your stuff. When they ask you what is your purpose of traveling to the United States today, as most border agents will usually do, you can say, hey, I got laid off from my TN employer. I'm just here to clean up my stuff, clean up my apartment, and return to Canada for good. And you should be good there. So what I did was I scheduled a trip from San Francisco to Toronto, and Toronto to San Francisco back. I did that, and everything was all good. Then I proceeded to start selling my stuff. So I was selling my cars, selling my toys, my stuff in my room, so that I would have less stuff to move. Because to be honest, it's kind of stressful to move so much stuff. And if we're being honest here, you don't need half the shit that you end up bringing anyway. So that's what I was doing for the last month or so. Could have extended it to 60 days, but you might be asking yourself, what happened after the 60 days or after the time when you started to sell all your stuff? Well, for me, the best thing for me at that period of time.
It's not giving me the actual width. Okay, so these are the same. These are the same. It's just that they're overflowing. That's why the numbers are different. Okay, that's fine. They are at least the same.
You have to think of the trade-offs that you're making with that decision, right? So the decision there is, staying in the U.S. You cannot
What do I
work
need with auto? I don't know.
exclusively on savings unless you work under the table, which, well, one is illegal, and two, not compliant by immigration laws. You cannot work on a tourist visa, right? So the most important thing for me was to stay good on the immigration visa front so I can return in the future, right? So that was one option. And, and be a valuable asset. There are ways around it. So if I went back to Canada, I would be good.
Like here.
Any employer I want. Work at Starbucks, I can do Uber, I can do a whole bunch of other things. So at the end of the day, and if I went back to Canada, I would preserve my US-based savings so that when I go back, that nest egg that I already have, I can start it over to worry about building my emergency fund and all of that good stuff, right? So that's the decision that I end up making, is to return to Canada. And as hard made those hard decisions to move back. Now you might be thinking to yourself, well, you mentioned that, you're back. That doesn't mean that you're saving a whole lot of money. What are you going to do from here? Right? So what I'm doing now is I actually moved back into my parents' house.
What I'm doing now is
So reason for that is because although
So if you go back to his story, right, we can consider what we can learn. So there's one thing I want to say, and I don't want to judge him, I'm just trying to
Is
give
this a
some
comedy?
observations here, right? So he seems kind of, and that's understandable, particularly when not only do you lose your job, you have to move very, very quickly out of the country, right, back to your home country. When you maybe moved from Canada to America thinking, you've got a positive future for yourself, but you don't. The other thing is that, at the end of the day, you don't really have a support system, right? Times in the industry where I've been working with female co-workers who might be complaining about one thing or the other, or about the cost of something, but in many cases, from speaking with them, they're not actually paying rent, right? Their boyfriend or their husband, who might have a similar career or a more high-paying job, will be paying the full rent and living off of it, or paying for holidays and dinners and things like that. And it's like, she always has a support system. If something doesn't work out, she can just rely on her husband's money or her boyfriend's money. And you see this all the time. I remember in the finance industry, I remember seeing instances whereby there was a co-worker right on who wanted to leave the finance industry and she wanted to go to a lower-paying job that was more flexible, like a job outside of finance, and it wasn't really stable. It was more like you get paid a certain amount of hours depending on the demand for that. And she just relied on her husband and his property investments to kind of lifestyle. And she traveled the world. She wants to go to every country in the world. She's been to 50 or 60 countries, I'm not sure, but she's like got a tracker on her like social media. So the thing is, as a man, you have a support system. As a woman, you strong girl wants to character, they can do that, right? The other thing, for him, your parents, you can't judge you, they can let you start and say that they don't mention all the details about what's going on in your career unless you have to, and like I said, it's very important to consider that if you want to go back to school, it's not just be what I want to get an American job and it's going to pay well, or if you'd like to do a job like back to your country quickly, you have to do things like that. So it's all about the opposite of what worked initially, maybe for his parents, and he's making the right decision to move quickly back to Canada rather than staying in the US and draining through his savings, right, while hoping his network will find him a job. So he's being very hyper-flexible. And there's a very popular term there, hyper-flexible. I like this about people online who mention similar things where they say, and I think it's a fair point, unless you're a multi-millionaire, which I would say is above 5 million, some people say above 10 million, I would say unless you're a multi-millionaire at that level, it makes sense to be hyper-flexible, which means that you're in a position where you can work different types of jobs in the industry, you can do different types of cities. If you're going to have a family, you're flexible in terms of what type of education they'd have. You can live in different locations. If the rent increases in a particular part of the city, you're willing to move to another location. That's why in some cases it makes sense to be single mother, which may reduce your flexibility. Being flexible is so important in an economy that offers no stability, right? So what we want to focus on is flexibility, not stability, right? In some cases that could be working on some cases that could be as with my later video, switching industries. Now, the thing is, if you build stability, you have to think about this element of stability. Because people think stability means doing the right thing, saying the right thing, working a stable 9 to 5, listening to what your parents did and following the same example. That's not really how it's done. If you want to build stability in your life, you have to make decisions that might seem incorrect, right? Because they're following the traditional path. It is just his decision to move back to Canada, right? You have to build stability into your life, right? In this case, it seems like an unconventional decision. It's like him moving away from a job market that's higher in tech. Because you said Canada, you're better off in America, but you realize that it was a higher living cost, it's better to move out of that location. The same way some people lose their job in London, the lowest cost of living location outside of London, to have a better lifestyle and maybe have a lower salary, of course, but they have a bit of stability there, maybe they move back to their family, things like that. Now, again, to the nest egg, having savings is important and to the foundation, time, investing, job, side hustle rather than just jump and dive into maybe low quality tech job. Fine. And this is what I'm saying. If you can afford stability for yourself, which if we're going to be real, it's going to be very difficult times ahead. To be honest, for many people, many men in particular, finding that financial stability. If you can't build that financial stability for yourself, don't worry about, I do the right thing. I need to quickly get married and buy a big house and have kids. It's like, first build a foundation for yourself. And that's going to be quite difficult. We get the rough things like that. And that's why I work with my clients directly one-on-one, right? To help them build power, pay, and freedom. You don't want to be in a position where you kind of get ahead and maybe you're already, just focused on, well, I need to keep my girlfriend happy, so we go on that expensive vacation. Oh, well, have to put my kids
Grid cells are the images.
Is that the best decision? How are you putting yourself in a position to maximize your freedom if things do go haywire, right? Whether it's a divorce, whether it's a layoff, things financial foundation for yourself as strong as possible before you're making these longer-term commitments. Like, I'm going to buy a property.
Flex Justify Content Center. Let's just do this.
To stay here for the long term, you see how rough
see.
the job market can get. You might be renting. Worthwhile thinking through those longer-term decisions before you do commit to them.
A CRM shouldn't set your teams back. It should revolutionize the way they work. A CRM shouldn't block your work.
Now, what's interesting is that how much pressure a lot of men are under, and I think this is a good example of that. I mean, he's playing off well, like he's attached, but many people would be having a complete mental breakdown because they're like, oh, I studied this technically, I want to go in a stable career, and it just doesn't exist, right? And it's interesting how dysfunctional this society is getting, right? He normally finds a scapegoat, right? And sometimes you see a lot of rhetoric blaming masculinity, toxic masculinity. It's like, what is the reality? It's not this multi-millionaire Andrew Tate lifestyle, right? Or being
It's the toxic max. It's the toxic masculinity, you guys.
Right, trying to find some semblance of stability in your life, right? So it's kind of ridiculous how economy is and how it normally tries to find a scapegoat, but you can't at this point. You just look at the elites and you look at their poor decision making, whether it's mass migration, high tax, high inflation, and you're just like, okay, cool, well, they've extermination, right? Is completely ridiculous. The other thing I want to say is, do your best to plan ahead. I remember early on in my career discussing my future career plans with maybe people who were 1 or 2 levels above me at the time in the corporate hierarchy, and they said, listen, you can't really plan that far ahead because things change so rapidly. Management change, you want to replace you with someone else, you might want to start mastering this part of finance, and then there's a layoff there, or there's just less demand, there's less job opportunities there, you can move into something else. I see this all the time, right? Sometimes people are in the sales side, they're working with sales and trading, and then the job opportunities dry up, they move into working in a hedge fund or asset management firm, even though those jobs are a bit more rare. Sometimes that's the only thing they can do because they can't get back into sales and trading.
No, you really can't do that because those are all the same size.
Like I say,
all of these pictures are not the same size.
Long-term plan, a 5-year, 10-year plan, just focus on the next 3 years. How can I put myself in the best?
So it's kind of like.
So that's how I plan my life. One thing like I say, through spotlight decisions, right? Through the skill.
This is going to be more difficult than I was anticipating.
Reviewing and reflecting where he is in his life, right? And this is how you survive and succeed in the economy, is through effective planning and being adaptable and hyper flexible, right? You want to build back better, the new normal, things like that, right? This is the new normal, right? The new normal isn't this better reality that people like Tony Blair or any of these politicians or journalists are talking about after the lockdown situation. You're building back better by being more hyper flexible, being more minimalist. The systems. If you think like a samurai, focus on long-term strategy where you can live a more meaningful life. It is difficult, and you can see how challenging it can be for someone like this.
Building myself as a figure, and my main target is probably going to be iOS positions, but because I have a background in electrical engineering as well, I'm also electrical positions. While I do have a financial runway to be a little bit more picky, that doesn't mean I'm laser focused on software. I can lean into my electrical background and open up door for that as well, right? Now let's talk a little bit about kind of the meantime. Are you going to the answer is yes. You know,
Dude's literally an electrical engineer.
Go back to my old college job was being a lifeguard. I worked that from 16 to 26, and then took a break to work my engineering job. And I'm gonna go back. I have the experience, and there's also a wall there, so it's pretty much guaranteed employment. My ego doesn't like it at all. You know, I don't really like the prospect of, going back to old as a 28-year-old lifeguard. But at the end of the day, I have to swallow my pride and say that I put myself in this position. I didn't, so I have to kind of pay the. It's basically you gotta do what you gotta do, right? But now that presents a question here: do I plan on going to the U.S. moving forward? And the answer is definitely yes, but under very specific circumstances, right? What I've learned from this experience is this company that I was working on was a small startup. It didn't pay, market rate. I didn't have any leverage, so I accepted it anyway, to be totally honest with you. And it came back to haunt me because I was on TN. I had no hopes of getting closer. It ended me in this position. So if I do choose to return to the US, it better be for a good opportunity and for me to at least have the opportunity to get a green card or permanent residency, so I don't have to move back to Canada on the leg. It's not really getting American citizenship. It's more about, not uprooting just because there's a loss of employment. I think that's the most important thing in my next role.
Clip. That's the one I want. Clip.
Firstly, you start focus on diversifying your skills. Now, I often say in my videos, try to have skills like a technical skill that you maybe learn at university and a physical skill, whether that's, let's just say, you're learning to be a holder on the side, like he's mentioned, learning to be an electrician, or he has electrical engineering skills. So if you have two different skill sets, at least you can have a side hustle because you've learned two different skills, and it gives you a bit of flexibility. You're not just like staring at a screen on Friday, and then on the weekend you're going to log into another laptop and stare at a screen on the weekend, where you might be doing something a bit more physical, whether that's like you said, being a plumber or whatever. Now, it's good that he's focused on being strategic with what he's doing, rather than being desperate for anything that's available. He mentioned iOS targeted roles, iOS apps like that, and also electrical engineering is something that interests him.
With Gemini and Google Sheets, of schedules in no time. From just one prompt, AI can help your business get all of the details right, from headline to hashtag.
Want to become a certified project manager but aren't sure about the skills you need? The PMP certification prep course on Udemy is just the thing. Learn the basics of project management and get yourself ready for the PMP certification exam. Anytime access on mobile or desktop, you can plan your learning around your life. So grab this course and learn on.
You need to just go get a tent and a bag and go look for a spot in the woods.
They might go, oh, we need 5 to 10 years experience, we need good paying salary range, we need these type of skills that are essential or mandatory and optional skills. The whole idea there is that they are a broad set of experience and income levels and salary expectations to see who'd be the best fit. Sometimes it's a personality fit, sometimes they'll go for someone who's less experienced, whose personality fits better with the team and the company. The point is, they diversify the candidates they're looking for. You should diversify your skill set in a similar way to have
Diversify your bonds, nigga.
Everything I think companies do, the strategies they do, they lie to you before a layoff, they say your job's secure, they say when you lie to a company before you quiet quit. We should learn from all their strategies. What is a company doing to be predictable, right? Everything's staying, play along with that, being nice with them while you're looking for a job outside, while you're figuring out another opportunity that's there, right? Work on the side hustle during company time, the same way company time wastes your time. I give you this point, this mandatory mental health development meetings you have to attend, that mandatory, right? For this company training. You've got to do anything they do to you in a passive aggressive way or a sensible way, you return the favor, right? It's like an effect, karma, whatever you want to call it. Everything they So it's important to, like I say, diversify your skill set. And he mentioned back to being a lifeguard, which was his job at college, right? Working side trying studying at college as a lifeguard. And it's important there, like, to consider not bridges. You never know where you might fall down the career ladder, fall down the social ladder, and look down at all of these jobs. I see a lot of people who construction, manual labor, and I see like those jobs are important, and they're in a state of civilized society is quite difficult to do. And I know they don't pay well, but it's good that those options exist and you can always pursue them. I would say never look down on that and never look down on going into that. Take jobs better than everyone else. I work in finance. I personally don't do that. I just think about what was the lifestyle of that particular job, right? What is it like? Right? And there are people who work in finance, made a lot of money, saved and invested it, but they haven't got enough to never work again. So they were a teacher, a high school student, economics teacher at high school, a few of them, they were quite relatively well off. And what they would do is just teach to make it money while they live a lifestyle for their investments. Yeah, there's so much making having a side job, a lower paying job where you focus on another source of income. What's also good here with having these different skill sets, being a lifeguard, electrical engineering, and iOS app development, the better is he can't be pigeonholed, right? Let's just say one of those things dry up, maybe there's no demand for lifeguards where he lives, then he can just focus on more of the tech careers, right? If there's a demand for electrical engineering, he can focus on that instead of the iOS web development. So it's kind of a lot of interesting opportunities. And leverage and options are so important, right? Leverage and options is important. Dating, living location, like that, right? It's important, right? So we say everything's become a marketplace. Everything's become like exactly like what job, what city, friendship, job market. Or people talk about their dating market, about like what leverage and options do you have, right? And people come up with terrible circumstances at a company or in a relationship because they don't have the leverage and options to go do something else. Now, this guy, even though he might be in a difficult spot now, given he's kind of focused on those three different sets I mentioned before, it's like he's never really dealt with in the future, even though it's a difficult place in the future, he's never going to have to deal with a manager who's like bullying him, right? He's going to deal with a bully type of manager, let's just say in iOS web development, maybe he can switch to another job, or if it's really bad, he can just go to electrical engineering. I know it's easier said than done, and typically you need several years of experience before you're making some job hopping type of scenarios, but it actually builds more stability and adaptability to your lifestyle rather than just being pigeonholed as the 200K or best web developer, whatever you be, right? You and the only thing you can do is that. And it's like, okay, well, if there's head layoff, you're going to be struggling to find a job, and then you spend a year looking for a job. Versus this guy who can make money on the side, even if it's a smaller amount, as a lifeguard while he improves his tech skills. So this is the thing, right? You can really see how you can switch the difficult situation into a winning situation over the course of years. It's not really easy. Now, the other thing is, I think I mentioned briefly at the start, the job laid off at was a startup company, right? Company in the US. Now, those come with a lot of risk. Yes, you have a bit more control and freedom in the sense that you don't have to deal with a very rigid corporate structure where you've got to get approval for every little thing you have to mark. It can be very clean, right? If you don't get on with certain personalities, they might push you out very easily. They don't have really strong employment internal practices, right? Like a mega corporation where they might keep someone on and give them a performance improvement plan. If they just don't like you, they might get rid of you very quickly. So if he's doing something right, building stability into his life, the system's not going to offer it. He's not going to have the stability that boomer generation when he sees jobs, big houses and suburbs, right? This goes back to an important principle, a book I covered earlier in a video on my channel several months ago last year called The 50th Law by 50 Cent and Robert Greene. And there's a term there called intense greed. So you look it up, intense greed, which is reality of what it is. Regardless of how you don't rely on escapism, yourself, if I can have a job or not, you can look at how harsh reality is and deal with this is what he's doing, right? Deal with the ups and downs rather than just fooling himself with his sense of stability. Now, we see where he was in November when he went from layoff in 2024, January 2025, 7 months they are still looking for a job, and then in April of this year, right? So we're getting about 3-month updates from him. Now you're gonna listen to his latest video about the job search, really getting to him, dealing with burnout in the job search.
5 shortcuts to building an online business fast. First, I used Fiverr to find an amazing web designer who brought my visions to life. Then I hired a photographer to take
So then I need to,
I also hired a copywriter to write
I guess that means I need to actually,
Once my website's ready, I hired a social media strategist to create a marketing plan.
oh, stupid
earlier
bitch.
on, I was interviewing LinkedIn,
Okay.
in January or so. I didn't make it past the technical full screen, unfortunately. They're pretty strict on everything, so I was kind of the recruiter told I was on the fence, but not strong enough to pass. The second time around I'd say February or so, I reached out to one of the old recruiters that I used to talk to regarding my opportunities at Uber. Basically, told him, hey, I'm interested in this role at Uber, and he forwarded my resume over to the appropriate recruiter there. Got started with the hiring process from Uber. So managed to pass the phone screen, and then it went off to the on-site. So I took about 1.5 months or 2 months rather to prepare in total from the technical phone screen to the on-site. Unfortunately, I was not successful there, and actually I experienced burnout. So right after I finished my Uber on-site, I felt sick, I felt under the weather, and it was very unusual for me because usually I just, take a weekend and get back on my feet. But this was a little bit different. I was trying to lead code and I was just extremely tired, right? It was very uncharacteristic of me. And the reason
There we
for
go.
this is
I mean, it's
I
not
was essentially
correct, but
studying like 8 hours, 10 hours a day, trying to give myself the best opportunity to pass Uber, but it ended up biting me in the ass at the end of the day. I ended up getting burnt out for that. So from there, I decided, you know what? Let's go ahead and let's just do some things in other engineering, like electrical engineering, manufacturing engineering, things where I can just rely on my behavioral interview side of things and talk about what I did at my last place of employment, because I do have a bachelor's in electrical engineering, rather than going through the gauntlet that they call the code style interviews. So that's what I did, and on average, from the time that I started, actually applying, I had 3 interviews a week, give or take, and I generally tracked out as much as possible because I don't want to get in, to be honest with you. So that's what's going on in terms of my job life.
So before we go to the final one, see, this is the emotional burden on the guy that really comes with the job search. Oh, it's just a simple thing, financial situation. But a lot of people have that safety net support system, particularly as a man, right? Like a woman, like I say, she's gonna have someone out there, but often as a man, you're kind of somewhat isolated with these things. And this is what leads to like men having a crash out men.
What is it?
And I think they're more social instability because of that, which again I've covered in other videos, right?
object fit cover.
Job search is to be somewhat emotionally detached, and the same way, before a fight like in the UFC or in a boxing match, they
Object
just
fit
why they do their
cover.
they do their training, they make sure their energy is
Object
right.
position center. We'll get to that in a
The
minute.
same way with the job interview, you do your job search, you do connections, recruiters, you do your resume, whatever it would be. You apply for jobs, you have HR and potential recruiting managers. Then, just when it's time for the interview to come up, maybe the day before, a few days with prep, but you don't build up so much hype and energy and burnout too quickly. Like feeling like for every exam you go through when you're at high school, or college, or university, you kind of be somewhat emotionally attached, you make some prep for the job interview, but you're not too emotionally invested. So you keep it in terms of your energy and your time investment around the time of the job interview.
Okay, this is more what I was talking about. And then finally,
that's the way of seeing it, like a bit like a nap, right? So
object position center. Object position center.
take
Now it'll sort of just.
and again, flexibility and adaptability is going to be
No,
much better.
evidently it doesn't do anything. Okay, whatever.
Having, I think, you mentioned like 3 interviews.
Finally, the image grid on the left side. Oh no, what you would do is here,
With Gemini and
this
Google
is
Docs, you can get help brainstorming visual
5
inspiration for your
pixels.
brand. From just one prompt,
Is that what I
AI
said?
can create custom images that bring your vision to life with ease.
Okay.
As an entrepreneur, I'm thinking about 12 things at once. I love Upwork's AI job description generator, even coming up with a job.
I've been doing in the meantime to kind of keep myself afloat. Got a job at Lifetime Fitness as a lifeguard. Because after I got burnt out, one of the things that I've kind of noticed is I've not been really making money, right? So I thought working was a waste of time. You know, I should need to focus all out on the job search. But because of my burnout, I really took a second look to say, you know what, there might be value in just getting out of the house every once in a while, talking with some people, talking with coworkers, you know, that kind of. Got a job at Lifetime. It's actually a really nice job. It's a really good kind of split in the kind of get myself off on refreshing your inbox, that kind of thing.
Did he just say he was getting himself off?
And yeah, so that's really what's going on in the past couple months since my job hunt. So in summary, did software early on, got burnt out, moved over to the electrical / manufacturing side of things. Still a little bit burnt out, to be honest with you, but it's a way to keep myself in the game and not like take like a step and keep the momentum going. So, and then lastly, just Lifetime, getting myself out of the house, that kind of thing.
Well paying and saving a lot of his money, then taking a step back and thinking maybe going into electrical engineering, and then even taking another step back into lifeguard work, which is kind of full-time income while he's doing his job. The difficulty of this economy, right? You can't fool yourself. You seem to be seeing these extreme situations, extreme winners showing off their wealth on social media, losers who are struggling to keep a job. And I'm not going to go with him. I'm just saying it's like this society has become so polarized in every way, right? And again, he's showing a lot of good admirable skills, you know, stoicism, having an flow state in terms of being focused on finding his next opportunity, not letting it get to him, having an emotional outburst.
Stoicism and flow state. Okay,
And
guy.
I think you mentioned like in 28, 29, so in the 30s, having a real turmoil. And this is the reality it's going to be for a lot of people in this very dysfunctional economy. And again, that's why I try to help my clients over 10 years experience in the finance industry. So I understand the finance and corporate office politics, and I through my career coaching, which you can see here. There is a link in the description for that. But just to finish up, I have a course, right, that covers these type of issues, right?
Now let me sell you something.
Point 8, more 8 course is about mastering mental toughness.
See, they have way more pictures than I do.
Training your mind, daily discipline,
But
and
whatever,
solitude,
it's not
right,
about.
and ruthless self-reflection to dominate your profession. And what I mean by that, this is what this guy's demonstrating, right? He's really thinking critically about where he is, where the job market is, what his next move should be. And if you want to learn more about this, I cover this throughout the course. So you have a coaching program there. Feel free to check the link in the description to get started. Course more about office politics and dealing with the ups and downs of your career. A completely free ebook, 48 Laws of Career Power. I just wrote that in the last few weeks. Many people are saying like this book, so definitely check it out. It's completely free. I have a mailbox newsletter, mailbox money, email me free career advice. And yeah, feel free to check out any of that, but it's mainly the career coaching that will help you make those life-changing decisions.
So now
Career and financial
I've got to add
Let me know what
a.
you think about this layoff example in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video. 2 recommended videos on this.
It's probably gonna play another fucking commercial. So this guy is totally screwed, even though he's got a fucking electrical engineering degree. He's gotta go be a fucking So now we are going to add our I already kind of did this. Hold on.
There is disaster because that has been. There's like Daily Mail articles on it and shit, and they put up videos of it too. It just doesn't get that much attention, right? What is the argument? They're not really going to the gym. They're not really talking about books. Like I think they probably are. Honestly, I think they probably are doing that stuff.
Out together in physical fitness. We help each other get jobs. We have camaraderie. That's all great. That's all really great. That sounds like the Boy Scouts or like a fraternal organization.
It is a lot like the Boy Scouts. What's the problem, really?
That's great. Why do you need to go out with masks? Why do you need to buy uniforms and masks and march up and down the street and give speeches about how like blacks and Jews aren't real Americans and all this kind of stuff? Why do you got to do that? What is that inviting other than trouble? You know how many people would welcome? You know, they have a thing like this in Belgium. Dries Van Langenhoven had it with, and I don't know enough about it. Maybe they do this kind of stuff, but as far as I know, they're not doing masked up parades and uniforms, at least not the same way. There's a need for a fraternal group. That would be a cool thing. People think.
Do you know how much the delivery cost will be, dude? It's 20-minute drive to the nearest pizza place.
They talk big social benefits to the organization. Great. Why do we need that element? Why do we need the element of everyone in the group is going to be expected to put on a mask and go and parade around the public?
This kind of ties into what we were talking about yesterday. Like, it's hard, man. How much do you show your power level? How much do you hide it? Right? Nick is saying don't talk about Jews and blacks, as if he doesn't go on his show and talk about Jews and blacks. But I get what he's saying. It's like if they're a group, and so everybody is kind of at risk for whatever Rousseau says, whereas the Groypers are like a loose group that anything.
Oh yeah, I think.
But it's there's not that much difference. There's just really not that much difference, and you know it's so you talk about it on your internet stream, but you can't grab a megaphone and go talk about it. I don't know, man. It's tough. I get where he's coming from, and I don't know what the answer is. Like, it's a tough one. If you never broach the hard issues, then what are you really doing? But yeah, there's obviously a risk of getting into these things.
First image and grid image.
Socially unpopular.
You don't even realize. In Charlottesville, people are getting hunted 5 years
But
after.
yeah, and so everyone has to do the biggest way to stop it. But that's kind of how I feel about it. You can say you have a different approach without being so negative. It just feels unnecessarily negative, and like there's some other more personal reason for that. He's kind of alluded to they annoy him, like he would have to promote us or whatever, which I don't even know if it's PM, but it just seems kind of like unnecessarily sort of negative. Like his criticisms may be fair, but he's very, very down on it, and it doesn't seem like he needs to be.
How about the fact of like Ku Klux Klan laws? You want to know why? Because they carry torches. Are they lawyers at Patriot Front, and they know
Alright,
all
let's
of
go to
these
Kara's levels.
esoteric statutes that can be used against them? At Charlottesville, they got charged for carrying a torch. You can't carry a torch in a parade because it's a KKK intimidation statute, and they hunted them down 5 years later for that. That's the kind of
Yeah, that's fucking crazy.
shit that they will do. You saw
They don't carry charges. To be fair.
You saw it in Charlottesville. You've seen it in other places. I don't think it's a good idea. I've never supported that. I've never supported masked up rallies. I don't.
They do. They do carry shields sometimes, don't they? Which that might be sketchy. I would assume they have like lawyer types checking into what they're doing. But you mentioned Rico, and that's like they hit you with that if they want to. They want to hit you with a conspiracy charge. There's not a lot you can do about it if you've ever talked to someone.
I think it's a good idea. And some people think, they're okay with that risk. Hey man, your funeral. I'm not going to be blamed for that. Like, I'm not an unreasonable person. They want to go, we got this fraternal group. Okay, great. Why we got to do the weird parades? Why we got to do the weird Fed parade? I don't get all that. Why do we have to have shields and jump out of trucks and look like army men? That's fucking weird. We don't look like we're the army. We have shields. We're jumping out of a truck. What is that? It's a gesture towards a militia. That's what that is. It's a gesture towards a militia.
Yes.
And that's a fucking dangerous game. I'm not about to sign up for that. What it is insinuation
I will.
of
I'll sign up for
we
it.
occupy space, we're forced, we're like an army. And for people might think that's cool. You want to do that, you do it secretly. Quietly. You don't go and challenge the government and say, hey, here we are, we're occupying your city. We're basically a militia with shields. I don't like it. I don't like it one bit. Yeah, it's always been bad vibes. I don't know where that guy came from. I don't trust him. And everybody's always pushing me, you got to talk to him. I'm not, so what, I'm going to go and promote him and give him a platform. We really need to talk to this guy. Why the fuck do I need to talk to this guy? What's he going to tell me why we need these rallies? You go and tell him, go and give the public an answer. Why do we need rallies? He says it's for marketing. We live in the age of social media. Make a TikTok. You don't need to go and put everybody in danger of a fucking Rico stat.
I will say this in defense of the Patriot Front. One of their earlier videos from them that I saw on BitChute, this was like a few years ago, and they were doing like one of these like marches through like a community, and they were filming it, but they were talking to people on the street, and what was really interesting to me was people they were talking to, these like middle-class white Americans in this little town where it was, were actually like receptive and positive. And some of them were like, we got you too, we support you. And that is actually very white killing to see. I'm not going to say that most white Americans would have that reaction. But showing that there are people out there for Rico.
I'm ready to fucking head. Well, there goes that.
Introducing Gemini in Gmail. AI that thoughtfully summarizes conversations and helps.
And that's why I kind of impressed the need for, we do need a billionaire, we do need a kind of vast and large movement to serve as like a windfall of true society, because other
Fuck. Yeah, sorry guys. It wasn't worth it. It's not worth repeating.
it's just too small. They strike at it and the whole thing blows up. You think about even like, let's say I open a community center in a major city like New York or Chicago or LA. If even one person finds out this is the all-white community center for whites only, it's going to be a press story. Local community center found to be tied to white nationalists. You're going to get Antifa. You're going to get the local village. You're going to get, everybody's going to come out and try and disrupt the plans and make it even prohibitive to continue operating. And so that's sort of and maybe I'm just like scarred from that experience of 10 years of just like beating back, this irrepressible force. Eventually, we're going to need to kind of bypass that. But I think we need to hit sort of a critical mass first, because I don't know. I mean, what has your experience been since? Maybe that's a good question for you. Since you kind of got a lot of attention recently for your intentional community, what's sort of been? How have they been trying?
Yeah, Jessica, I literally texted her and got my lunch like 10 minutes later. Much faster than the Uber Eats. This is good too. It's like chicken rice, ranch.
Kind of mess with you.
The main thing they've done is contact government offices, their housing commission is the only government office that might be able to try and find us or create real consequences. And even if that goes through, it's probably going to be like $15,000 fine for first offense. But it's very asymmetric in our favor, I believe, because if we go defend ourselves in court and win, we set important precedent. And if we sucks.
So what's my data going to be? My data is just going to be.
Kind of open that door and set a precedent that it's okay to do this sort of thing. That will embolden more people to follow suit, and I think it opens a lot of possibilities. So other than that, I mean, they've contacted media outlets, local media, a lot of people real here now will recognize me, which is strange.
Okay.
Never had that. Nick just dropped out of the.
Oh yeah, and then he starts dropping out.
So, we can
What was I gonna say?
civil rights groups and things like that. Civil groups made statements condemning us, which is not consequential. So it hasn't been that effective. And it's largely just backfired. We got hundreds of new applicants and tens of thousands of dollars in support out of it. So, I thought Jews were supposed to be good and strategic. Generally, they are. In this case, this one Jew on Reddit was making the most news about it. He started like 20 different threads on different subreddits. So, I guess thank you to that guy. Really. Yeah, as far as like how they could attack us, though, clearly the law is very complex, and there are always different angles for them to try. Even if we, and we have been, even if they hire. Sorry, it's my camera is changed. Even if we hired, high-priced civil rights lawyers, they might find some way to get us on development law that we hadn't paid attention to yet. And we've done our due diligence and researched every area that we possibly could, like what's relevant in starting a company. So securities laws might come into play. Obviously, discrimination law, civil rights law, Fair Housing Act itself. It's not like we're trying to get around these laws. We're just trying to abide by the law as far as that's possible. Now we have a $50,000 plus legal budget, and we're hiring high-priced lawyers in all of these different areas. We're trying to build out a framework that's going to be replicable and that will work for people in different situations. So it's spurring us to kind of preempt.
50K doesn't go very far with high price lawyers. You'll soon find out.
Effectively patch any holes that might exist in our overall position. So I think overall it has been good. But yeah, like, what do you do about that fact that when you organize at scale, they will target you and try to.
You just skip it. This is actually the most interesting part of the conversation so far. This is kind of like, I'm really interested in the behind the scenes legal battle that's going on.
Take to your employment. Part of it, I think we have to realize that if we're going to succeed, it's not going to be a zero sacrifice route. Like, we're going to have to make some sacrifices either to our quality of life or where we
Those
live.
documents at $5 on Rumble. In defense of PA Boy Scouts of America, we're always in parades.
Yeah, I think it's the masks, though. In defense of Nick's position, I think it's the masks part that he thinks is weird. Which, really, what are you ashamed of? What, like, oh, they're gonna, I mean,
Yeah, exactly.
the problem is now they would get fired for sure. If they came
A
out,
mask implies that you're like ashamed of something.
I don't know. It's hard to know how much the masks has shaped public opinion, but it's certainly not this year.
Or the
Basically, it would
options.
be
So some people think that keeping your options open is liberating or empowering or makes you happy.
right. Can't scroll left and can't scroll right, right?
Options to choose from, when they ultimately choose,
And then
they
this
include
div
nuts.
gallery
In the
root,
supermarket, there are 10 different flavors of
which
toothpaste.
is
Whatever you pick, you're not going to enjoy as much as if there was just 2 flavors of toothpaste and you went with this, or if you were given a tube of toothpaste. So I think we need to look at it in that
Makes
way.
sense.
Like, in order to organize,
seems to be a
all be able
position
to work in New York City
road
or someone else.
How
to
sad is the
We have to start. We have to start another call. This screen capture got the name.
Oh no!
Yeah. All right, I'm gonna say whatever.
All right, that's okay.
And we're back.
Depending on doing the higher tier membership, where some portion of monthly payment for that will go towards paying ultimately a lawyer that will be on staff, not just to defend us in the case that we are brought to court, but also to proactively continually do legal research. And we should have teams of lawyers. I think a lot of different services we could also provide for ourselves, like healthcare, Fraternal Benefit Society. Societies can provide health insurance to their members, and if we have our own private clubs where there are also requirements to,
no, this comes on breaks. Paste. And we have another one over here. Copy. On this side. Paste. So it's going to be left. It says -1 red. Okay. Hmm. Stupid fucking keyboard. Okay. So how come I don't see the arrow? Oh, because they're coming to that number. That's weird. Okay. What, Sophie? What? Oh, that's because of this. Hold on. So now I have to